Imagine traveling to a foreign country, only to find that your passport is met with a cold stare or even outright hostility. It's a startling experience, one that many Americans have unfortunately encountered in certain parts of the world. Today, we're going to delve into the complex reasons behind why some countries may view Americans with suspicion or even animosity. While the United States is often seen as a beacon of freedom and democracy, its foreign policy decisions and cultural influence have sometimes led to strained relationships with other nations. In this video, we'll explore 10 countries where anti-American sentiment may be prevalent in 2024. It's important to note that these are generalizations, and individual experiences can vary greatly. Country 1, Iran. Iran's diplomatic relationship with the United States has been strained for decades, primarily due to the 1979 Iranian Revolution and the subsequent hostage crisis at the U.S. Embassy. These events left a lasting impact, fostering deep-seated mistrust and animosity. Additionally, the U.S.'s imposition of economic sanctions and its support for Israel have further fueled anti-American sentiments among Iranians. Traveling to Iran as an American can be challenging due to these long-standing tensions. Visitors may face hostility or suspicion, making it a potentially unsafe destination. The strained diplomatic relations mean that Americans in Iran might have limited consular support in case of emergencies. Country 2, Venezuela. Venezuela's relationship with the United States has deteriorated significantly, especially under the leadership of Nicolas Maduro. The U.S. has imposed economic sanctions on Venezuela, which the government blames for the country's economic hardships. This narrative has fostered anti-American sentiment among the Venezuelan populace. Traveling to Venezuela is risky for Americans due to these hostile sentiments and the country's political instability. The U.S. government's lack of diplomatic presence further complicates the situation, as Americans may find themselves without necessary consular support in times of need. Country 3, North Korea. North Korea's isolationist policies and adversarial stance towards the United States have created a highly volatile environment for American travelers. The historical animosity, rooted in the Korean War and subsequent political confrontations, has only deepened over time. The U.S.'s implementation of strict sanctions against North Korea further exacerbates these tensions. Due to these strained relations, Americans visiting North Korea risk severe repercussions, including arbitrary detention. The lack of diplomatic presence and assistance makes it exceedingly dangerous for U.S. citizens to travel to or remain in North Korea. Country 4, Syria. Syria has been embroiled in a devastating civil war for over a decade, with U.S. involvement through military actions and support for opposition groups further straining relations. The Assad regime and its supporters view American intervention as an affront to Syrian sovereignty, fueling strong anti-American sentiments. Given the ongoing conflict and the hostile environment towards Americans, traveling to Syria is extremely dangerous. The lack of diplomatic relations and the high risk of violence and kidnapping make it a perilous destination for U.S. citizens. Country 5, Russia. U.S.-Russia relations have soured significantly in recent years, primarily due to geopolitical conflicts, sanctions, and accusations of election interference. The Russian government frequently portrays the United States as a hostile adversary, which has contributed to rising anti-American sentiments among the Russian population. For American travelers, this hostile environment can manifest in various ways, from suspicion and surveillance to potential legal troubles. The strained diplomatic ties mean limited support for Americans in distress, making travel to Russia increasingly risky. Country 6, Cuba. Although diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Cuba saw a brief thaw during the Obama administration, they have since deteriorated. The reimposition of travel restrictions and economic sanctions under subsequent administrations has reignited anti-American sentiments on the island. American travelers may face bureaucratic hurdles and local hostility due to these strained relations. The limited diplomatic engagement further complicates matters, making it challenging for U.S. citizens to navigate any issues that arise during their visit. Country 7, Pakistan. Pakistan's relationship with the United States is complex and multifaceted, marked by both cooperation and conflict. A significant point of contention is the U.S. Drone strikes in Pakistan's tribal areas, aimed at eliminating terrorist leaders. While these strikes are intended to target militants, they often result in civilian casualties, which many Pakistanis perceive as a blatant disregard for their sovereignty. This has led to widespread anger and resentment towards the United States. Additionally, the U.S. foreign policy in the region, particularly its close alliance with India, Pakistan's arch-rival, has contributed to the strained relationship. Many Pakistanis view American actions and policies as biased and detrimental to their national interests. This sentiment is further amplified by economic challenges and political instability within Pakistan, often attributed to perceived U.S. interference in the region. The situation is exacerbated by the portrayal of the United States in Pakistani media, which frequently highlights American actions that negatively impact the country. This has fostered a general atmosphere of distrust and suspicion towards Americans. Consequently, American visitors to Pakistan may face significant hostility, making travel to the country risky and potentially unsafe. For Americans considering travel to Pakistan, it's essential to be aware of these complex dynamics. The strained diplomatic relations mean that U.S. citizens may have limited consular support in emergencies. Understanding the local sentiment and respecting cultural sensitivities can help mitigate some risks. But the overall environment remains challenging for American travelers. Country 8, Turkey. Turkey's relationship with the United States has experienced significant ups and downs, particularly in recent years. One major point of contention is the U.S. support for the Kurdish YPG forces in Syria, which Turkey considers a terrorist organization linked to the PKK, a Kurdish militant group operating within Turkey. This support has been a source of significant tension between the two nations. The failed coup attempt in Turkey in 2016 further strained relations. The Turkish government, led by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, accused Fethullah Gulen, a cleric living in exile in the U.S., of orchestrating the coup. Despite Turkey's repeated demands for Gulen's extradition, the U.S. has refused, citing insufficient evidence. This refusal has been perceived by many in Turkey as a sign of American complicity in the coup attempt, leading to widespread anti-American sentiment. Economic tensions have also played a role in the deteriorating relationship. U.S. sanctions on Turkish officials and tariffs on Turkish goods have contributed to economic instability in Turkey, further fueling anti-American rhetoric. The Turkish government has used these economic challenges to stoke nationalist sentiments, blaming the U.S. for their economic woes. As a result, American tourists in Turkey may face an unwelcoming atmosphere, marked by suspicion and hostility towards U.S. policies and actions. The strained diplomatic ties mean that Americans in Turkey might encounter challenges and limited consular support in case of emergencies, making travel to Turkey increasingly uncertain. Country 9, Yemen. Yemen's animosity towards the United States is largely driven by the ongoing civil war and the U.S. support for the Saudi-led coalition fighting in the country. The conflict, which began in 2015, has resulted in one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, with thousands of civilians killed and millions displaced. U.S. military support, including arms sales and logistical assistance to the Saudi-led coalition, has been highly controversial, leading to widespread anti-American sentiment among Yemenis. The coalition's airstrikes, often using American-made weapons, have resulted in significant civilian casualties and destruction of infrastructure. These actions are seen by many Yemenis as direct consequences of U.S. involvement, leading to deep resentment and anger towards America. The blockade imposed by the coalition, which has restricted the flow of essential goods and humanitarian aid, has further exacerbated the suffering of the Yemeni population, who blame the U.S. for their dire situation. Additionally, the presence of terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, and ISIS in Yemen has complicated the U.S. role in the conflict. U.S. drone strikes targeting these groups have often resulted in collateral damage, including civilian deaths, which has fueled anti-American propaganda and sentiment. This further compounds the risks for American travelers in Yemen, given the severe humanitarian crisis and the hostile environment towards Americans. Traveling to Yemen is extremely dangerous. The lack of stable diplomatic relations and the high risk of violence and kidnapping make it a perilous destination for U.S. citizens. Any travel to Yemen should be avoided due to these significant dangers. Country 10, Afghanistan. Afghanistan's relationship with the United States has been deeply complex and fraught with challenges, especially in the aftermath of the U.S.-led invasion in 2001. The invasion, which aimed to dismantle the Taliban regime and eliminate al-Qaeda, led to a prolonged military presence in the country. While the initial overthrow of the Taliban was met with some support, the subsequent years of conflict and instability have left a deep scar on the Afghan populace. The U.S. military operations, including airstrikes and ground offensives, have resulted in significant civilian casualties and destruction of property. These actions have fueled widespread resentment and anger towards the United States, as many Afghans blame the U.S. for the ongoing violence and lack of security. The presence of U.S. troops was often seen as an occupation, leading to a complex relationship marked by both dependency and animosity. The withdrawal of U.S. troops in 2021 and the swift takeover by the Taliban have further complicated the situation. Many Afghans who supported or worked with the U.S. forces feel abandoned, while others see the withdrawal as a failure of American intervention. The resulting humanitarian crisis, economic collapse, and continued violence have exacerbated anti-American sentiments. For American travelers, Afghanistan presents a high-risk destination with significant dangers. The hostile sentiments and lack of effective diplomatic support make it an unsafe place for U.S. citizens. Understanding these complexities and the volatile environment is crucial for anyone considering travel to Afghanistan. Understanding the diplomatic and security challenges in these countries is crucial for any potential traveler. Anti-American sentiments, driven by historical and geopolitical factors, make these destinations particularly hazardous for U.S. citizens. Always prioritize your safety and stay informed about current international relations before planning your travels. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more insights on global travel and international relations.